to be learning how to broadcast and subscribe in C++ directly to events that are both available in Blueprint and C++. So what's the use case here? Well, in the BP Quest Manager, we have our complete quest event. And at the moment, we are calling it in the blueprints because we didn't know how to do that. But it is possible to move this into the C++ implementation. It's also possible to move the subscription to an event, such as the one in Quest Marker on Begin Play, where we subscribe to the quest updated and refresh the visibility off the back of that. That is also possible in C++. So we're going to do both of them in this module. So first of all, let's do the broadcasting. So we go to questmanager.h. We already have our dynamic delegate set up on this class. So we're going to go over to the C++, and in our complete quest implementation, basically we want to be doing what we're doing in Blueprint, the call to complete quest. And that's pretty straightforward. What we do is we have the completed quest dynamic delegate, and we can do a dot operator on this, and then just call the broadcast function, which will take just one parameter, which is going to be our quest index. So we don't have to even do that double lookup of the quest index. So it really is just that simple over in the C++ to do broadcasting. Now, how about subscribing to events? That's slightly more complicated. So we're going to go to the questmarker.h. And what we're going to have to do is, if we have a look at the blueprint for the idea of how this works, is we're going to have to do the subscription in the begin play function. We're going to have to bind. But what are we binding? We're having to bind a function, something here that is a custom event. But over in C++, that is going to be a function. So we're going to create one. We'll go over to the header file, and we're going to make it private because nothing else needs to have access to this function. So it is going to be what return value. It's going to be a void return value. And we know this because it has to match the signature of our dynamic delegate, and it's going to have to take in the index. So we're going to call it, as we have called it over here in the quest marker, the quest updated. And as we said, it is going to take in an int32, which is going to be called the index. And it doesn't matter whether the name matches in this case, because we just need the signature to match. And then we can go ahead and copy the signature to the clipboard and paste it into the bottom of our quest marker CPP. Now that we're here, we need to subscribe to that delegate, and we need to actually call the refresh at the appropriate times. So we've removed our begin play here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the signature from our quest manager, which is the same signature for that. So it's going to be protected, begin play. We'll go over to questmarker.h. I'm going to put it just above our private section, protected, begin play. And I'm going to copy that over into the C++, just above the refresh visibility function. Then in begin play, we are going to call refresh visibility, because that's something we want to do right off the bat, just to make sure that the visibility is in sync with our quest manager. We're also going to call refresh visibility down here. And finally, we need to subscribe. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we need to get hold of our quest manager. We can do that with the get quest manager function. Then we've got the arrow key, and because it's public, we have access to that dynamic delegate, completed quest. And then on that, we can do add dynamic. Now you notice the autocomplete is not entirely correct here. It wants to complete to internal add dynamic, but that's because there is actually a macro here in between called add dynamic that expands and does some extra stuff. Now it would just be add if you weren't using a dynamic delegate and the signature is ever so slightly different, but just you might have to undo that autocomplete. Now what you have to do here, what you have to pass as the signature is the object that we are going to call the delegate on, so this, and then the actual reference to that function. So it's going to have to be the fully qualified reference, the a quest marker : quest updated, and we can get the reference using the reference of operator, the ampersand, like so. And that's going to hook up the delegate to this instance of the object and that particular method, and it's doing that on begin play. Pretty straightforward, really. And it should be quite familiar to anyone who has used this kind of delegate system in C++ before. It's quite standard. And as I said, the only difference between this and a non-dynamic delegate is that you're going to be using add instead of add dynamic. Let's have a go at compiling and see what happens. Now the compilation succeeds, but if I go over to my main map and play, we'll notice that actually it is not succeeding in being subscribed because we don't refresh the visibility. We do update the UI in the top left, but obviously the broadcasting is working and the subscription is not. Now, the reason for this is not entirely obvious, but because we're using a dynamic delegate, that means that the function we're calling has to be dynamic, i.e. it needs to be a U function. And that is what we're going to do. If we add the U function macro, we don't have to add any kind of accessibility to it, but if you add the U function macro and go ahead and compile, it should work. In some versions of Unreal, this would have given an error when compiling or while playing, but here it does not seem to be doing that. If we go ahead and play now that we have compiled with the U function and go up to this marker, you can see that the marker's visibility has indeed properly refreshed. So things are working as we would expect. Now we can go and remove the redundant code. We no longer need to be subscribing to the event in begin play, so let's remove that and compile and save. Let's also remove the call to completed quest that we do not need in BP Quest Manager. Just simplifying that right down. In fact, we don't even need to be overriding our complete quest function here in Blueprint anymore because the C++ version does everything that we might need. So that's it. We have moved the entirety of that event over into C++. We've been able to create it and declare it. We've been able to subscribe to it, and we've been able to broadcast to it entirely in C++. So now you know how to do that.